Mini Matters, a miniature painting podcast.
Right, welcome everyone to another episode in the comic book series. And we're joined here today by Ruben from Big Child Creative. Thank you very much. And obviously Lionel, who we all know and love, obviously. So, no real solid topic other than comics. And we do have a whole load of photos to go through. But really it's just another chat and an enjoyable moment spent with three guys on a cast. I think that sums it up, right?
Yeah. I thought what would be interesting, Ruben, how we'd start it off, as we've done with every other guest, is can you tell us what your first experience or your early experience was with comic book art, and if there was any comic books or any artists that influenced you growing up?
Yeah, of course. In my early and younger days, I think I was watching the interview from Arnau Lázaro, and it's curious because I begin with the same comic book that
No way.
he did. Yeah, Mortadelo y Filemón, probably in Spain, was so popular.
Crazy.
So
because Lionel and I were we were both pretty shocked by the choice because we hadn't heard of this, right? And even looking at the slides that we saw, to me it doesn't look like a comic book that inspires art, if that makes sense. At least in the way the Marvel and the other comics do, which is like, super saturated with contrast. So I'm amazed and pleased to hear it's the same for you, because Alfonso had heard of it as well. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was so popular, and at the end, there's I think there are very well drawn this comic from Ibáñez, and I think the success of this comic was the ironic thematic that they have in his history. So this is what I like from these comics more than the art that was incredible, of course. But these kind of comics are not about color or something like that. It's all about the story, the conversations between the characters, and they made me laugh a lot. So this was my first contact with the comic, and later will come other kind of comic books, like for example the Savage Sword of Conan, which I love nowadays, and this kind of stories made by Roy Thomas and drawn by John Buscema. This probably was the comic book that was more impacting for me. Okay.
I just realised I was muted. It's because motorbikes kept driving past and it was super loud. Do you think that you were more, or which of those two styles or comics do you think you were influenced that made you go into models or arts, or was it neither?
I think at the end, I'm not sure, because when I start to paint models, as I told you, when I wrote the Mortadelo y Filemón, for example, I was not attending to the color, to the drawings, and I think when I enter in the miniature world, I was influenced by a couple of friends that played this kind of games. When I saw the Hero Quest, for example, this was amazing for me, because again, the history of the games that we play together with my friends. So I think for me at least, the thinking about the artistic component of this kind of illustrations or drawings, I think comes later. I think when I start to read, as I said before, the Savage Sword of Conan, or for example, Spawn. I was reading all my high school days the series of Spawn. Eh, yeah, it's true. I spent a lot of places reading this kind of books, hiding the book beneath the table of class.
Yeah, I'd love.
With,
It makes me. Go on, sorry.
and maybe when I saw the drawing from McFarlane, I definitely start to appreciate something like, wow, this kind of comic is something really good. And but I started to paint miniatures years before that.
How old was that then? Oh, sorry, Lon.
I'm not sure. I'm 40 years old, so I started to paint miniatures maybe when I was 16, something like that. Something like that. So I think a lot of years ago.
Yeah.
The one thing that keeps coming up when we speak to other artists about this, and particularly Spanish artists, is the impact that night models had when they came into the scene, and they seemed to explode onto the scene. Were you painting at that point? Do you remember the first time you saw night models, and did it have any impact at all on you at that point as an artist?
Absolutely, yes. For me, one of the first contact that I had with large scales was the miniatures from Night Models, and the works talking about painting, because the sculptures are amazing in every one of them. But talking about the painting properly, I think for every Spanish painter was a really big impact for us, because a lot of new things were happening in our screens. Okay, we saw vibrant colors, rim lights, hard edges, big contrast, and I think, like Alfonso said, they together with Jose Manuel Palomares, they guide the future generations maybe of Spanish painters in making these kind of things. Later, I remember that I work in Night Models as well. I paint some miniatures from Star Wars and one model from Marvel. And I think that I don't like to make an idol around Night Models, because this company maybe were the artists that were making this kind of works. But when I was working there, we, Alfonso, Jose Manuel, and me, and other people, we flee away from this company because we get unpaid because some works we did. So I don't want to make an idol around this company.
Yeah, but you don't need to do around the company per se. It was more that
it's the company, movement from those artists.
Yeah, brought together these artists happened to be in that place at that time.
Yeah,
and it caused like it's. I know the comparison isn't the same.
That's the point. That's the point.
Yeah.
I think the artists were here, were making something that nowadays are still fresh and something new for the people. So those kind of works were read in.
Doesn't happen often though, does it? Something like that, like where all of a sudden it's like a perfect storm of goodness. I know that's not a saying, but you know, in the art world, I can't remember many times when everything happened at once and it just created this nice thing to really move everything ahead.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting actually, because Alfonso said it in his interview, and having followed Big Child now for about a year and a half or so, I agree with him as well. I think what we saw in Night Models back then is now happening in Big Child, in terms of the influence it's having on the painting world, in terms of the palette choices, in terms of driving that forward. And Alfonso said that as well. You look at a Big Child studio creation, you know it's there. You know it's one of yours because of you've got that signature style, particularly yourself and David, who are producing a lot of the painted miniatures as well. So from what we saw back then, that Night Models had that ripple in the miniature world. I actually think Big Child are doing now and will make an impact going forward. I think, and Alfonso said, we'll look back in about 3 or 4 years' time and look at this stuff the same way we viewed the Night Models impact about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think this is obviously the thing that should happen because at the end I learned from Alfonso, from Jose Manuel Palomares, and in Big Child we started Jose Manuel and me painting and trying to continuate these kind of things. At the end, as I said before, the people that were inside of Night Models, there are in Big Child, some of them. So it's logic to continue this kind of a style and the way that we paint. We could adapt our style to any style, but we like the saturated colors, we like contrast, and these kind of things were so evident in this period in Night Models.
Yeah. Well, you can see Alfonso's Marvel. I don't even know what to pronounce these. Chujis. The version Alfonso did of the Punisher. Chibis. Chibis.
Chibis. I don't know what.
I don't know either.
Pronounce it.
Lionel's saying chibis. I'm just going to go with that.
Chibis,
yeah.
Chibis. Fine. Anyway, okay. Right. The point was, like the style is very similar to what Alfonso did on his version, and obviously, I mean, it doesn't. I don't know, but I doubt that you guys were collaborating and saying this is how I'm painting mine. It's just a natural thing that you clearly have similar styles, and it's well, I'm loving what you guys are doing, and I loved Alfonso's what he did as well. Like, and genuinely, like, I don't know. We spoke about this with a now, and I imagine it probably didn't take you that long, or whoever painted these that long to paint them. But the outcome's still fantastic. I like seeing them when they're so simple but so effective. It's.
I think at the end in Big Child we always try to maintain uniformity. I think is correct this word. In each project that we manage for other companies. So this can have some sense if every painter paint the miniature with his own style. So always I'm focused to I'm worried about all the painters paint in a similar way. So all the painters of the team are very skilled and could adapt his style to the necessities of the project. So I think maybe the project from Marvel United could be the more visual impacting of the ones that we have made, because probably they have the more stronger colors, saturation, contrast, and the rim light that everyone gets amazed by this easy trick. Okay, you could see this rim light that is made by drawing some lines and gradients in some surface, and is something proper of the project. We have made something similar than in Marvel United. In the previous Zombicide project, which is called second reboot or the relaunch of the Zombicide first edition. And you could find some similarities between both projects because in Zombicide we started to add some real lights, and the saturation of the color was very high. So I think maybe in the Marvel United project could be the most impacting because all the characters are well known by everyone, and I think the Chibi style is so nice for the people. So I don't know because this was more impacting, but I'm happy with the results.
I'd be interested how, because obviously today in the series we've spoken to independent artists who just work by themselves. I'd be interested to see how a company like Big Child work on a project like this. So obviously, Cmon have come to you with a brief. How much of that brief was detailed? How much did they leave open to you guys to say, you know what, just do amazing paint jobs? How much collaboration did you have with the sculptors? And at what point do you guys sit down, you as manager of the painting team, and say, right, we're going for cell shading or we're going for this, and this has to be uniform. These are the key 5 things I want to see on every model that you paint. Can you talk us through that process?
Okay, it depends on the project because some clients leave us open mind and freedom for make whatever we want. So this is more usual from collectors, for example, that want a single piece painted at high top quality, and they gave us freedom to paint in the way that we want. But in projects like Marvel United, we have the luck to have some concept art, some illustration of the characters. So these concept arts are used for the sculptures as well, for sculpting the character. And later we take advantage of the concept art in order to colorize and paint the miniature in the way that the client wants. So
you can on the screen you can see the Black Cat illustrations, and I only mentioned that because I wasn't sure if you could see it. So yeah, carry on. Sorry.
That's the key. Our objective is to adapt ourselves and our painting style to the concept art that we have for this specific project. So our workflow in these projects, big projects, because at the end we painted around I don't know for sure, but around 80 miniatures in 1 month. It's true that we are 8 people painting inside and collaborating with Big Child for these projects. We make some miniatures in advance for the client and to see if we match his expectations. And once this is approved by the client, later we paint the whole project.
Okay.
And if yeah, go on.
Sorry, Jamie, go on.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Lionel. What was I going to say? It was basically like that thing where you sell yourself. What the hell? It's a pitch. So you did the models. They could have said they didn't like them, and then you wouldn't have done the models, obviously.
Sorry, I have some problems with the audio. So if you could repeat the question.
How do I suppose just say it again. It was basically a pitch. So you painted the models, and then if they liked them, obviously they did, and you did the project. If they didn't like them, then you just wouldn't have done the project at all.
Yeah. This is the way that we work. Sometimes we
crazy.
add some touches, and we could add some recommendations to our clients, because the world, the miniature, have his own rules, which are different from the world of the illustration. But in each miniature, at the end, the client wants to show his miniatures in a screen for the people. So we are working, and we are so used to work in order to take a picture to the miniature, and this picture could work in a screen. So it's like to transform the 3D sculpture in a 2D illustration. So
It's an interesting.
It's hard. It's hard sometimes because you have a lot of views in a 360 degrees of the miniature, and you need to choose some angles to work better than others. So it's difficult to paint in this way. But
I can only imagine.
I think that's a trick as well. You've made it look so simple, but as you say, it is difficult to do, because Jamie and I made the point last week when we were speaking to Arnau, is they're painted that well that if you look at them for too long, you forget they're a 3D model. They actually look like a piece of comic book art. They look like a 2D piece, which is obviously what you've tried to do, but that's very difficult
to execute.
To do. I think it's quite understated. I don't think people would appreciate how difficult that is to do.
Yeah, and there are some techniques that are made for the picture. As I said before, because all people comment about rim light, for example, and the rim light is all about a line. In other color, as you could see in the screen, in the right side of Yondu, there's a blue line along his body, his entire body. So in this view, this line, it works perfectly. I think benefits to the image. But if you saw this line in a front angle, you could see the line, and could looks a little bit weird because you are seeing a blue line across the miniature. But at the end, something happens with the non-metallic metal. Years ago, when people start to make this kind of non-metallic metals against the true metallic metal, some people talking about that the non-metallic metal, when you turn the miniature, start to not working as much as in the main view. But with the pass of the time, people are not worried about this kind of effects in the non-metallic metal. So I think the paint continues his evolution, and people are learning a lot of things right now more easily than before. So I'm happy because I'm happy because people assimilate. I don't know if this word exists in English. Assimilate.
Interpret. They take on the data.
Take on. Simulate.
Take on. Okay. Could take on this kind of concepts more easily than before, because now the social media, you are seeing this kind of things every day right now.
It's interesting. Go on, Lon.
It's just worth saying, while you're on this picture and you're talking about the information, you've actually got a YouTube series, haven't you, at the moment, where you're doing a step-by-step showing people how to paint this model. So what we'll do is we'll put a link to that YouTube video as well in the description below for anybody who's watching.
I'm certainly going to check that out. It's annoying. I might have to do what you did, Lionel, and buy the models. But then I'm getting scalper guys off eBay, and it's a tricky one.
It's just to let you know, Ruben, there's one thing that in all the painting groups that they're in, everybody's like, I'm so sad I missed this Kickstarter. I can't believe because Big Child have been posting every day, haven't they? These models on your social media, on your Instagram. Yeah. After obviously the Kickstarter finished a couple of months ago, so obviously there's this new wave of excitement, and people are like, "Well, look, I can't get them anymore." Yeah. So I managed to get one from eBay, and I paid probably a bit over the odds for it. But from seeing obviously Big Child's Instagram feed, I had to have a go. And have a go at them. So and Jamie's in the same position now. In our painting groups, a lot of us are going, we need to get these models, they look amazing.
I also think like the whole thing about painting for one like pose with the rim lighting and everything and N&M and all that, like because of social media now, most people are painting, you know, in the middle of nowhere without friends that they can just go and show the model to. So it's like You do. I find myself now the last like year and a half. I just can't be bothered to paint the back of the models very well. Like if I know I'm not entering a competition, I'm like, this is such a boring part of the model anyway. Like nothing happens at the back. So like I basically just go bleh, and then it's kind of done. That's got to be to do with social media and the fact that I don't need to paint it all, because I'd much rather just learn a bit more on a different project from the front. So anyway, I don't blame you guys.
Are these painted all the way around, Ruben?
Sorry?
Are all these models painted all the way around, or are they painted from just the front?
It's 3D
360.
360, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But at the end, we sent some pictures to the client, and at the end, as I said before, there is not sense in publish uninteresting views, because the size of the miniature, I think, I could ensure to you that it's painted, but I think there's no interest in this kind of view. If you are playing, maybe you see this side of the miniature, but we prefer to make interesting publications and interesting views for our miniatures. So this is sometimes it's better to publish 3 pictures, I think, than 10 pictures of the whole miniature. If you like to see the miniature, I think it's better to show the tutorial video where you could see the miniature from all his sides. So this is why we made this tutorial series, because a lot of people, we found that were asking how I could do that, and what kind of magic is this, and for sure, guys, it's more easy than it appears. You need to have some concepts about blending, highlighting, but I think you don't need to fit the sample. You only need to spend a good time, and from time to time you could obtain better results as you practice. But you have the material in the tutorial to see how to do that. The rest is a matter of time.
Yeah, practice. I must say, when I was looking at this little captain, I was literally just daydreaming about how I would achieve what you guys have achieved in colours, and thinking, yeah, he'll say it in the video. I don't need to think about it. But yeah, it is super vibrant, and I think I don't know. I don't know about everyone else, but I do enjoy the vibrancy side of things a lot more in the last few years, and I don't know if it's a movement that we're all going towards, but I don't know. I don't think so, because otherwise these wouldn't have had such an impact. If everything was this vibrant, you know, it wouldn't be that same big burst of color.
Yeah. Sometimes we work with secondary colors to add shadows to the colors and these kind of things. I could Like I always talk about the black color. You don't need to paint with black any shadows, so you could mix with complementary colors as well, any color in order to darken, and you will get some vibrancy in the color. But maybe for this series, we use more saturated colors, even in the shadows. So we manage the complementary colors more carefully than before. So at the end, if you need something saturated, use saturated colors. It's all about this.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept in itself. I guess we could talk about that for hours, couldn't we? Especially for people who don't know.
I think the piece that you've done, Ruben, as well, that I really, really like, which is people might not realise, and I hope I've got it right, is if you go back to Hawkeye, his glasses are obviously a flat piece of plastic. So what you've done is you've painted all that detail on. You've painted the eyes, the reflection, the faded look to make it look like there's a face behind those glasses, which I think is amazingly skilled.
It's really 8-bit, isn't it? It's super 8-bit looking.
But also really underrated, because I think people will look at that and not realise actually that when you get that model, it's just a flat piece of plastic. You put all the information and detail behind that and done it so well. I think it's a really understated detail. It's really nicely done.
Zoom in, no hiding. It does though. It genuinely does. It reminds me of like an 8-bit, cartoon that you'd watch at the moment, where I can almost imagine the sheen going across the glass. Like continuing in that little, and then some like retro 80s music coming on, jumping around, he's bobbing up and down.
Like I said, I think most people would have just gone with the reflection, but to paint the eyes and everything onto the surface to make it look like it's there behind it, I think is a beautiful detail.
Yeah, it's a funny detail to implement in this miniature, because all the miniature is very, very simple, let's say. And I spend more time painting the eyes than maybe the body.
Well done, Lionel. Well done. You nailed it. Yeah, it does look really cool.
But then once again, that's why it's so fantastically executed, because it's unnoticeable. People just assume, and then you get the model thinking, I'm going to paint it, and realise I can't put all that detail on. So
I can copy it maybe.
It's very underrated. I think it's very difficult to do as well. Roughly how much time? Sorry, I think we got a delay. That's probably why I keep speaking over you. Sorry. You go ahead, Jamie.
It's probably also because no one cares about our technical setup. What it also creates for me, the glasses, is movement. There's a whole load of movement that's created from that the other models don't have, because you can't create that reflection, and it's awesome. So how long did that model take you?
Maybe this one half long, around 2 days, I think. We have we need to spend some time in the miniatures in order to match the quality that we like. And sometimes is good because you could spend less time in some miniatures. There's no rule around that, but sometimes is the opposite. You could spend more time painting this kind of miniatures, but at the end, I think you could see the tutorial where I paint the John Deere miniature, and of course there's no all the footage of the painting of the miniature, but you could see how manage this kind of miniatures, and are not so time consuming. So I think they are very good from casual painters to advanced painters, for all the levels.
I mean, I think that's what we're finding now is people who missed the Kickstarter are kicking themselves, because like you said,
Kickstarter.
these can be painted at any level. You can paint them at a very simple level because the volumes are so large and exaggerated. And at the same time, we know Alfonso is desperately trying to get a hold of some as well because he wants to paint some more to the level that Alfonso paints at. So where you've got models that are inspiring amateur painters all the way to professionals in the industry as well, I think obviously the sculptor has to be applauded and commended on what he's done or what they've done if it's more than one sculptor.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the question. Sorry, Lionel.
Sorry, it was probably more for a statement. It was more for a compliment and a statement.
Okay.
Then it was a question.
Well, I would say that, like, I had a question while you were talking, Lionel. But no, you were talking, and I had a question, and it popped out of my head. But yeah, I think, crap, am I going to remember it? It was basically, these are the 28mm again, aren't they? Or 32 millimeters?
Around that, 32, I think. Maybe a little bit bigger.
Okay, because I'm really curious to see if people really like the models by themselves, or people really like them now because of the paint jobs, and they can see the possibilities that these models can kind of take you. And I'm curious to see if they're as popular as I imagine they are, which obviously you can't tell. Is will other companies start producing more volumetric, simple models, or because I was having a good old bitch about Games Workshop in my head today, okay, just by myself, and I was annoyed at them for all the models they're creating, because this is opinion as well, right? Obviously, but I kind of get stuck where they're creating these kind of almost cartoony models now, but in a realistic way, right? These are clearly cartoons, and they nail it. Mm-hmm. Games Workshop, I don't know how I feel about them. Well, I know I hate them, but I don't know where I feel about the models because I was confused. Because I'm like, they're this cartoon, but they're real. Whereas if Games Workshop released a line of Elder that were like this, my God, I'd love it. Like, I genuinely would absolutely love it, and I'd buy all of what they could throw at me. Whereas now what they're doing, it makes me want to throw up in my mouth. So it's like, I'm excited by the prospect of these A, doing really well, and B, having an impact on other model companies. Because this style's not copyrighted, is it? It's not obviously the Chibi, it is.
Chibi style is quite popular, and it has been quite commonplace. And I'll have to say, hand up, I've never liked the Chibi style. There's never been a Chibi release. I don't like it at all.
Controversial, Lionel.
Until this release came, but until this release came out, and I think that's a testament to the release, because one, it's got to be subject matter, because I am comic book mad, so there is a subject matter there is having it. But I think Jamie's touched upon it. It's the paint jobs you guys have done as well. I don't think these models, don't get me wrong, they've been sculpted really well by the team as well, but I don't think these models would have half the impact or half the appeal if they hadn't been painted in this way. And that's down to the Big Child Studio and the way that you've done it. So I you've got to take credit for that as well. And there's a reason Cmon commissioned you to do this because they know you guys paint this, it will sell. And it's your job to sell the models through your paint jobs. So
but they missed the trick there by releasing all the models after the Kickstarter, the painted ones.
I think they were all on the Kickstarter already painted, but I think what Big Child have been doing on their own social media
promoting
now
it, I see.
is saying this is what our studio have done, which is why there's been a second resurgence. But no, all these models were painted and displayed on the actual Kickstarter as well. But yeah, like I said, for me, it's the paint jobs that sold it for me. I think them being painted by anyone else or any other studio probably wouldn't have had the same impact.
I could say something about that because I know that Chibi Style in miniatures was there a long time ago. So some companies have his own lines of TV series. But I think this Marvel United project have more impact because everyone knows the characters of the project. So
Mm.
it's more easily for you to assimilate this kind of aesthetic. So apart from that, I could recommend to anyone, as I said before, from any level of painting, that try these miniatures because they are so fun. And you could start refining your skills like gradient, airbrushing, and they are painted in a similar way, but the rules change a little bit because you need to smoothen a little bit the flat and large surfaces. So at the end, I found these kind of miniatures very funny and pleasant to be painted. So I could recommend you that make that exercise.
So you touched upon it then, airbrush. I hadn't thought about it. I just assumed this was all done by traditional hairy brush. Did you use airbrushes and different techniques? Can you explain? Can you probably go through some of the techniques you did use on these pieces?
Yeah, of course, because the eyebrows is always as when people hear that you paint with eyebrows, thinks about okay, it's with eyebrows, it's like the eyebrows paint alone, you know, and this is not true. The eyebrows is another tool for painters. It's like a brush. There's one difference between brush and eyebrows. With the brush, you could make everything. But with the eyebrows, you could make some techniques, but you can highlight with an edge with the eyebrows. And
I'd like to see people try.
yeah, maybe you could do that, but need some practice.
Yeah, he's got skills. Yeah.
And at the end, I think the middle point in everything is always the right answer. And if you could manage the brush and the eyebrows, you will have benefits from two worlds. So always, as I explained in the tutorial, I love to make an sketch with the brush, and in this sketch I mark the values of the lights and the shadows, the colors, okay, and the work with the brush is rough and and always you could see the brush strokes that everyone hates, and okay, this is another discussion, okay, but if you want the smooth gradients that everyone loves, you could make the air blending technique that is about to make glazes, which can be done with the brush as well, but you could make glazes with the airbrush, diluting way more the paint than usual, and making thin filters over these gradients that you want to smoother. So probably it's a little bit confusion while I'm explaining this, but in the video is everything explained.
I think I got it though. So
I think it's time, isn't it? You could do it with a brush, but why spend 4 days doing that when you can do it in 20 minutes with an airbrush? So as you said, it's the right tool for the right job, and why punish yourself? The finish isn't any different by using a quicker tool or quicker method.
And it is smoother though, isn't it? Like if you want to get that colour down, you're not losing details. At least when I paint with a brush, it loses details quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So is your team sick of the sight of these now? Bearing in mind you've had to paint 80 of them, you've had to talk about them.
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. Are you happy to have a break from doing this?
You can't say that. It's untenable position. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think once again, like Jamie said about Night Models, there was that perfect storm going on in terms of the sculptors, the IP, the painting style. I think we're seeing a similar thing here with this Marvel United. I don't think anybody expected Marvel to come along in a chibi style, which has shocked people. So that's a very different style. Marvel, as we know at the minute with the cinematic universe, is very hot. And then you put big child creatives behind the sculpting and painting. I think once again you've got a perfect storm here, which is why I think it's been, and deservedly so popular.
Yeah, we were so happy when we know about the project. So because at the end, all of us love some characters from Marvel, and the sculptors and the painters. We were so happy to collaborate in this project. So
Were there any
was
fights
great.
inside? Were there any fights inside the studio as to who wanted to paint which character?
Uh, s- Sometimes it's about personal liking, okay,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's about personal technique, okay. If someone is good and quick making, for example, greens and golds, okay, you will paint Loki,
Okay.
and
Does make sense.
we yeah, but as well, it's something about personal liking because some of the characters that I have chosen for painting, like Venom, I love uh, the old and the classic Spider-Man series, and Venom is one of my villains, my favorite villain. So when I saw the miniature from Venom and it's really well sculpted, I throw to this miniature immediately.
So yeah, basically the answer is absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I noticed you've done quite a lot of the Spider-Man
This is
sculpts.
important because I think when you paint or sculpt something that you like, you will put more emphasis in the things that you are
Mm.
doing. So unconsciously, you will make a better work. So this is why
Yeah.
the way that we do these kind of things.
Totally makes sense. Like, I think these models have maybe I've had one chibi, or the dragons and the elf rider. I had them both drawn in this style, and now I'm thinking in the back of my head, could I pay a sculptor to get these sculpted? It's probably there's probably just I need to let the excitement die down before I make any financial decisions based on what we're talking about now. But 35 quid, Lionel, yours was it?
Yeah.
For like 20 of them, is it?
No, there's only about seven in the main box, in the first box. Yeah.
It's still quite cheap though, isn't it? When you actually think about it, like.
Yeah, it's one of
honest.
those. Once again, I look back now because obviously you can still go onto the Kickstarter page and see what, and they were practically giving them away. I'm kicking myself for not of not going in earlier, but it was at a point where I'd come off Kickstarter because Kickstarter was just getting too dangerous for everybody involved. So I thought I had a hiatus, and obviously this came along. So you can still source them. You just have to pay. You have to pay that premium.
You pay that crackhead price, though, don't you? It's a tough one. Or maybe we could find someone who works in a company that they got loads supplied. I don't know, and try and source them that way. Maybe I don't know. Those people exist anyway.
So the final thing then, with all these models, did you have to sign off on each one before they went out? Being the art manager.
Sorry.
These models had to. Did they all have to be approved by you before they went out? So
Yeah.
So how easy is that to look at somebody's work, knowing what they put in, and say you need to make these changes or
Yeah, it's so easy because at the end the painting team we are working from years before, and every one of us with some sort direction could attach the goal for each project. So it's really easy to work with those guys. I like to mention, I hope to not forget any one of them because these guys like Jaime de Garnica, David Arroba, Rodrigo Ciprés, Marc Masclans, Miguel Matías, Tony Garcia, Sergio. No, I'm not sure about his second name. It's like Israel. I'm not about his second name. And Antonio. They are so great painters, so great people, and we are working together like a brotherhood. So it's very easy to make these kind of things.
Yeah, you know each other well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. Sounds like a fun place to work, to be honest with you. Sorry.
I was about to say, I think that about rounds us out. But while we've got you on, Ruben, we'll have to say, obviously, Big Child are doing a lot of interesting things. The next time you guys have a big project coming on, please come onto the show and talk to us about it. We'd love to speak to you about it and show it to the community, because we do think you guys are probably the most innovative studio at the moment, and you're doing some really interesting stuff.
I was to mention as well to Alfonso that's collaborated with us, obviously, for this project. But with Alfonso was the same, because he was my my teacher, so we know each other very well. So as well.
I hadn't appreciated that he had taught you.
Yeah. So for the you mean the next project that we have planned to?
Yeah, whenever you guys have a project you want to talk about, it's an open invitation to come back on. Like I said, Jamie and I are huge fans of Big Child, particularly your painting style and the impact you're having. We think you're doing some really interesting stuff in the industry at the moment, and there's always an open door for you guys to come on and discuss. It's always nice to speak to you about your projects, and obviously we were in contact over the Camelot Kickstarter, but because I think that was so popular and you guys were so busy, we never got to record the show in the end about that. But going forward with all the stuff that I know, all the stuff that we know you'll have on the horizon, hopefully you guys won't be a stranger and you'll come back into the show to talk about other projects as well.
For us, that will be a pleasure, because always that we meet, we had a great time. I remember when we meet in the SMC 2 years ago, I think, and and since then we didn't meet, but these kind of online meetings are good enough. So will be a pleasure to be with you again.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on, Ruben. Appreciate your time.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. And once again, if you do enjoy the content, please remember to leave a comment below, like and share, and subscribe so you don't miss another episode in this series. Thanks for watching. Thank you.
Don't want to miss. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.